Good morning, Surrender Youth Group. It's good to be with you and to be sharing God's Word with you. Today we're going to be in John chapter 10, verses 1 through 21, the shepherd and his flock. I tell you the truth, the man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but they did not understand what he was telling them. So let's try to do a better job at understanding this figure of speech that Jesus is using. First, there are two types of sheep pens. The first one we will look at is the common sheep pen, as in the communal sheep pen. This is where all the village flocks returned home for the night. These sheep pens were protected by a strong door, and only the guardian or the watchman had the key. Anyone who tried to get into the safety of this pen by another way was a threat to the sheep. He was a thief or a robber. The shepherd is concerned with his sheep. He goes to the gate. He knows the watchman, and they go into safety. Now, if more than one flock is in the communal pen, it is very important that the shepherd know his sheep by name. It is also very important for his sheep to know his voice. All the shepherd has to do in the morning is to step outside the pen, call his sheep, and only they that belong to him will come to him. When a sheep hears the voice of a stranger calling them, they will look up in surprise, and if the stranger calls again, they will actually run away. The job of a shepherd is very hard. The sheep won't eat without the shepherd, so his job is never ending. The sheep constantly wander, and so the shepherd constantly watches over them. It was the shepherd's job to keep the sheep from straying away and getting lost, and it was a dangerous job. He protected the sheep from wild animals like wolves and even people who tried to steal the sheep. Every one of his sheep was accounted for and on his heart. The Old Testament speaks of God as the shepherd of his people, and we as the sheep of his hand. It was also the leaders who were given the job of shepherding God's people. In fact, Jeremiah and Ezekiel said that God was very upset with the false leaders who, instead of feeding the sheep, were more concerned about themselves. That is why Jesus had pity on the people of his day, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Today, the leaders of the church are the shepherds of the flock. They follow in Jesus' footsteps to love the sheep and not money, to be an example to the people and not to exercise power over them. The word pastor is Latin for shepherd, and that shepherd should always be on guard, always be patient, and always share the love of God. Therefore Jesus said again, I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Jesus is now talking about this second sheep pen. When it was warm, the shepherds didn't bring their sheep to the communal pen. They would stay out in the hills. There were sheep pens on the hills with walls protecting them, but there was no gate, just a small opening. At night, the shepherd would lay down across the opening, and no sheep could get in or out except over his body. The shepherd was literally the door. Paul said that through him we have access to the Father. Jesus opens the way to God. Jesus shows us how God really is. He says, We can go in and come out. This is a well-known Hebrew saying that describes a security and a safety in life. If our lives are in God's hands, our worries and fears have no place. Jesus said that those that came before him were thieves and robbers. These were people who promised to bring in the golden age through war. They claimed to be leaders sent by God who believed in war, murder, and assassination. But their way only led people further away from God. Jesus taught the way of peace, love, and life, and that leads people straight to God. Jesus claims that he came that people might have life and might have a superabundance of life. As we live out our own selfish lives, it can become dull and meaningless. But when we walk with Jesus, our lives become meaningful and filled with purpose. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and he cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. We see in this passage the difference between the good shepherd and the false shepherd. David, when he was a very young man, told King Saul that he had protected his father's sheep from lions and bears. A good shepherd doesn't just risk his life. At times, he had to lay it down. The good shepherd is born into the job, like a calling. He goes out into the field as soon as he is old enough to go. The sheep become his friends, and it becomes second nature to put their needs before his. The false shepherd is not called, but comes into a job as a means to make money. He is in it for the pay. Wolves are a threat to the flock. Jesus sent out his disciples, and he said he was sending them out as sheep among wolves. The false shepherd runs away to save his own life. He makes no attempt at gathering the scattered sheep. So the church has two dangers. One from the outside, wolves, thieves, and robbers, and one from the inside, the false shepherd, or bad leadership. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. Only in Jesus Christ the world can become one. When a missionary goes out to tell the good news of Jesus, they speak of God as our Father. This makes us all brothers and sisters. This world divides. We have a different nation, different social classes, but the only thing that can destroy those barriers is the good news of Jesus Christ, telling all people of their universal Father, who is God. Jesus says they will become one flock and have one shepherd. It is a unity of loyalty to Jesus, not to one church or one method of worship, but to all different churches united by our loyalty to Christ. So we all have work to do in making this world one flock, with Jesus as our shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life, only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. Now at these words the Jews were again divided. Many of them said, "He is demon-possessed and raving mad. Why listen to him?" But others said, "These are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind?" So we see that Jesus' death was entirely voluntary. He did not lose his life. He gave it. He willingly accepted the cross for us. So here is the question. Is Jesus a madman who is demon-possessed and not worth listening to? Or exactly who he claimed to be? Like the people of Jesus' day, we must look at his works and decide. He healed the sick, and he fed the hungry. These are not the works of a madman. In fact, millions of people's lives continue to be changed by Jesus. The weak still become strong. The selfish begin to serve. The worried are finally at peace. The bad become good. This is evidence that Jesus isn't a madman, but the divine Son of God. So let's work to bring the world into the flock so that they too can hear the voice of our great and awesome shepherd. I pray that God would bless you and you'd have a good week.